long last, everyone, I have found the treasure. Yes. Oh my goodness. You know, it's weird. In a story all about pirates sailing around doing pirate things, oddly enough, the Straw Hats don't actually find treasure all that much. Like, how many times in the story have the Straw Hats actually found, like, a treasure trove? Okay, so Skypiea, they found one at Skypiea with the gold, and then Thriller Bark, of course, where they looted Moria's treasure vault, basically. You know, okay, Fishman Island, I guess, but does it count as treasure if, like, the people give it to you? You know, because the whole point of a pirate is, like, you find treasure and you, like, bury treasure and you take the treasure. You know, King Neptune was basically like, you know, thank you for helping the island. Here's some treasure. I don't know if that counts necessarily. They didn't get anything from Pancasar. They didn't get anything from Dressrosa. They don't find that much treasure, honestly. So I had to take it upon myself to find the greatest treasure that ever did treasure. Let's see what I got. Oh my god. I got a bunch of... I don't even know what these are. What are these? They're like Yu-Gi-Oh! Themed bottle caps? What the... Okay, well, here's Exodia. We got Exodia, the Forbidden one, guys. That's it. We got Exodia. We got Summon Skull. He's pretty cool, I guess. Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, because that's an archetype that really took off. Oh, Magician of Black Chaos. He's the coolest. All right, what else do we got in here? Oh! We got a Pokewalker! Okay, that was worth it. This is the greatest treasure of all time. Who remembers the Pokewalker? I mean, right here, right here. This was Game Freak at the greatest, you know, at the apex of the Pokemon franchise, okay? They peaked in 2010. Everything else has just, you know, Mega Evolutions, Gigantamax, whatever they're doing with the crystal crap in Violet and Scarlet. Just all downhill from there. The Pokewalker was the apex. Oh, we got a carrot keychain. All right, there we go. Carrot keychain, hashtag not a furry, I guess. So today we are talking about treasure. The greatest treasure in the One Piece world, if I have to say so myself. The treasure left behind by a great man that was taken from the One Piece world well before his time. I am, of course, referring to the great pirate, Captain John. Oh, what? You thought I meant Roger? Oh, pfft, Roger's treasure, the One Piece. First of all, that wasn't even his treasure, okay? It's been confirmed the One Piece existed before Roger. Like, Roger found whatever the One Piece was. Maybe he added some stuff to it. Maybe he took some gold doubloons or that giant egg that was on the Oro Jackson and maybe added it to the treasure. But the treasure was already there, okay? So he's basically just piggybacking on the, you know, the famous nature of the treasure to begin with. He's just adding his name to it or whatever, okay? Also, I want to just throw this out there. Roger didn't even give a hint as to find the treasure, okay? Literally all Roger did when he was about to be executed, somebody in the crowd spoke up and was like, hey, Pirate King, where's all the treasure? You know, if that dude wouldn't have said anything, Roger just would have died, right? And so Roger was like, you want my treasure, matey? Well, I left it all in one piece, in one place, somewhere out there in the world. Didn't give a hint, didn't give any, like, longitude, latitude coordinates. I mean, the dude that, what was that pirate's name? Olivier Levasseur, the French pirate that actually, like, took the cryptogram out of his necklace and threw that into the audience. At least he left something to go off of. Roger was just like, yeah, I have a treasure. Yeah, it's out there somewhere in the world. Have fun! You know, and maybe he was about to explain where it was specifically, and then he just got, you know, executed right there. But no, we're talking about Captain John, all right? One of the members of Rox's crew, alongside Whitebeard in his younger days, and Kaido was the apprentice, Silver Axe, Shiki the Golden Lion, Wang Ji, the greatest pirate crew that, you know, ever existed in the world of One Piece, and there was Captain John as well. Captain John has a famous treasure too, except Captain John actually wanted people to find the damn treasure, so he left behind a magical armband that somehow reveals the treasure's location. It is currently in the possession of Buggy, and the reason I'm making this video is because I always assumed Buggy found the treasure. The way that I always thought this worked was, you know, Luffy gives him the armband during Impel Down. After everything with Impel Down and Marineford kind of, you know, settles and everything, Buggy is made one of the 7 warlords. And so using his influence as one of the warlords and all of the, you know, the inmates from Impel Down that he freed that are now following him dutifully, looking to him as like a god on earth, you know, as he rightfully is, ladies and gentlemen. I just assumed with all that manpower and with Captain Captain John's armband, he would have found the treasure, and using that treasure is what he used to, like, build up Kali Bali Island and Buggy's delivery service, okay? But the funny thing is, as we found out recently with, like, the Cross Guild and everything, Buggy got all of the money to start up Buggy's delivery service from Crocodile. He took a loan out from Sir Crocodile, which I would pay Oda so much money for him to draw that meeting, for Buggy to come into contact with Crocodile, to sit down across a table from him, like in an accountant's office or like a bank somewhere, and for them to draw up the terms of a loan, all right, where Crocodile's like smoking a big cigar. He's not saying a word. Buggy's on the other side. He's got Galdino and Alvida there, and Buggy's just kind of wringing his hands, just like, okay, so, hey there, how you doing, Crocodile? I could call you Croco. I'll just call you Crocodile. You know, we're friends, right? Like, we broke out of Impel Down together, right? We're buds, right? We fought at Marineford together. We're really good friends. Anyway, so I need some money. You know, I'm a warlord now, but the government really doesn't give me extra capital, and I kind of want to build up this Buggy's delivery service on this island. So, hey, if you could give me, like, a small loan of, like, I don't know, like 3, 4, 500 million berries, maybe that could help me out a little bit. We're friends, right? The entire time this conversation's going on, Buggy is, like, sweating bullets. Crocodile's just there. He's not saying a word. He's not even really looking at Buggy. He's just smoking on a cigar, just like checking his watch, you know, notice a little bit of a scuff on his shoes. He's cleaning that off. And then finally, after like this really awkward meeting, he just hands him a piece of paper, and then Buggy just signs it, and then that meeting's over. But, you know, he's forever in Crocodile's debt at that point, right? So, yeah, that's exactly how Buggy got the money. So he never found Captain John's treasure, which means it has to be still out there somewhere in the world, okay? So let's talk about this, because other than the One Piece, Captain John's treasure is like the most famous, like, named treasure in the One Piece world. There's other treasures as well, like the famed, like, City of Gold or the Emerald City, and, you know, places that are made out of, like, really enriched materials that are worth a lot of money. You know, you could look at it like that. Then, of course, there's the whole, you know, not like literal treasures, but like metaphorical treasures, you know, like the treasure of my family, or the treasure that was the journey all this time, you know, something like that. You know, Mont Blanc Cricket and the Sariyama Alliance right now, they're looking for the Island of Dreams, which may or may not be a literal Island of Dreams. Maybe they're just out there looking for adventure, you know, that kind of treasure. But when it comes to, like, tangible treasures, you got the One Piece, which is, you know, whole name of the story, and then you got Captain John's. Okay, so what do we know about Captain John's treasure? Or what do we know about Captain John? Because we did find out some stuff about him ever since Thriller Bark, when his general zombie first showed up, his corpse, okay? So, we know about Captain John. He used to be a member of Rox's crew. All right, Rox's crew disbanded or broke apart at God Valley 38 years ago, all right? So this is back when Roger was still sailing the seas and everything like that. So John's treasure was probably very famous while Roger was still traveling, before Roger had ever found Laugh Tale or anything like that. Captain John's treasure was probably, you know, being spread throughout the world as like this great treasure left behind by one of the greatest pirates in the world. I mean, he really was. I mean, Rox was probably the most powerful pirate back in the day, but you got to think about, you know, Big Mom, Kaido, Whitebeard, Shiki, Wang Ji, of course, Captain John were all part of that crew, okay? So, he, I guess, dies. Well, he definitely dies at some point, because his zombie was at Thriller Bark, okay? Now, whether he died at God Valley or he went off to go do something else later, maybe it wasn't until after the Rox Pirates disbanded that he went off on his own, much in the same way that, like, Whitebeard and Big Mom went off on their own to become Yonko. Maybe John did the same thing, and then that's where he gathered up his treasure, or maybe he already had it when Rox's crew was active, you know, because 38 years ago, that was a little bit of a time ago, okay? He could have, you know, left the crew after God Valley, traveled around for maybe 10 years or so, gathered up a treasure. I believe it was stated he got killed by mutiny. I think he was like a really cruel pirate, or he did something that caused his crew to mutiny, and that's how he died, okay? But that happened at some point, and Moria and Hogback got possession of John's corpse, and then at Thriller Bark, and they animated it using the Kage Kage no Mi with the shadow of a drunk, basically. You gotta remember that the personalities of the zombies are the personalities of the shadow, not the person that they're animating, okay? So the Captain John we saw at Thriller Bark was a general zombie, and he was always drinking. You know, he gets out of his coffin, he's got like an old 300-year-old bottle of like sake or whiskey in there, and he's drinking that. He's covered in like swords, you know, like people like stabbed him, which I guess were his crew that killed him, and so he just has the swords inside of his body, which he probably, that's how he fights. Like he just like rips the sword out of his body that was used to kill him, and that's how he fights. That's pretty metal. He was walking out of the castle because Absalom, that's actually a really cool scene in One Piece where Absalom is waking up the general zombies. Go back and watch it. Like Overtaken is playing in the background, I think, or there's like the really, no, it's not Overtaken. It's I think Difficult is the name of the soundtrack. It's the same soundtrack that plays when Kuma's about to use Urasusa's shock on all of the group at Thriller Bark. You know, that really ominous like don 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 don, you know that. So, you know, Absalom is there and he's, wake up from your slumber, general zombies. You know, wake up and fight against the Straw Hat crew. You know, it's a really epic scene. So, you know, all of the general zombies are marching out of the to go follow Absalom's orders. John's kind of falling behind. He's kind of walking out. He's kind of tipsy. And then Absalom has to sort of be like, you know, hey, Captain John, get your head in the game. And John's like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, boss, I'll do that, right? So that's the personality he exhibited there. I'm also, like, this is one aspect of One Piece that I actually am kind of upset about, that all of the general zombies got, like, pretty much taken out in one hit by Oars's butt. You know, Oars just falls back on them and, like, stomps most of them out, including Captain John. So that's it. That's, like, all the really cool general zombies, like that one giant one that had, like, the golden armor and the huge beard, just pounded into the dirt, right? Just right then and there. However, even though that's the end of John's corpse, of his body, that's not the end of his legend, all right? So just keep that in mind. And maybe John did like to drink a lot. He was a pirate after all, but he wasn't maybe as much of a drunk as his corpse, as his marionette would have led us to believe, okay? So he gathers up this treasure. He gets mutinied. He has his armband, okay? Now, because his body ended up in the possession of Moria, I'm assuming that he had the armband on himself because he's the only one that knows how to use the armband to actually find his treasure, okay? So, you know, he had the armband on himself. Moria gets a hold of his body. They take all of the valuables off the bodies and they throw it into the treasure trove on Thriller Bark, okay? So all of the pirate crews that they sacked over the years, all of the gold, everything, all the jewelry, gems, anything they could find goes in that treasure vault, all right? So Nami found it, and they're, like, looting through all the gold, and, you know, Luffy finds this little armband thing, and he's just like, oh, you know, can I have this? And Nami's like, yeah, it's completely worthless. You can have it. Why not? It's just a little trinket. And so, you know, Luffy wears it for, you know, Sabaody Archipelago and stuff, and then during Impel Down, when he meets Buggy, Buggy sees the armband, and he's like, oh my god, that's Captain John's armband. That's how you find the treasure, okay? Now, rewind a little bit. How exactly, do you guys remember how Buggy ended up in Impel Down? Because it's a little bit of a story. So Captain Buggy, after he arrived in the Grand Line with his crew, because remember, they were in the East for a good number of years. It wasn't until they ran into the Straw Hats, and then the whole thing at Logtown, and then Luffy escaped, and they went to the Grand Line. That's when Buggy decided, all right, men, we're going to the Grand Line, right? Now, Buggy has been on the Grand Line before on Roger's crew, okay? And so he knows full well the dangers of it. So I think that's why, for the most part, he decided to stay in the East, where it's safe, okay? But after, you know, Luffy pissed him off, and he's like, no, we're not letting him get away with this. You know, we're going back. I think that lit a fire in Buggy for the first time in years. He's like, you know what? I grew up in the Grand Line. I grew up on the Pirate King's crew. Let's go to the Grand Line, Alvida. Let's do this, okay? And so they all go to the Grand Line, and they're looking for Luffy, but they're also looking for Captain John's treasure. I think this was a treasure that Buggy was interested in for a very long time. It might have actually have been the treasure that he was reading about on Roger's crew. I'm trying to think if the timeline works, because remember when Buggy ate the Bara Bara Nomi? So he has the Bara Bara, and he has this treasure map, right? And so he accidentally eats the Bara Bara Nomi when Shanks startles him. He eats the whole thing in one gulp, and now he can't swim anymore, and he drops the treasure map, okay? I'm wondering if that map had anything to do with Captain John. I mean, it might have. This was definitely back, this was after God Valley, 100%, because, you know, Buggy's like 39 years old, so God Valley was like, he was like a year old when God Valley happened. So let's say if Captain John had the treasure beforehand or shortly thereafter, God Valley, maybe he got a hold of like one of the, you know, the maps or something like that, and then he dropped it and he ate the fruit, and that's why he hates Shanks so much, because he can never find that map again. Okay, it was destroyed, I guess, in the water too. So maybe it was Captain John's treasure, maybe it wasn't. But anyway, he's always been interested in treasure, and so he's probably always been interested in Captain John's treasure, but being in the East, he was always too afraid to go after it, okay? But now that he's in the Grand Line because of Luffy, he's like, let's relive one of my dreams, let's find Captain John's treasure. So it was in volume 25 here, I believe. Hold on, let me check what chapter it was. This was all during Jaya, by the way. This was chapter 233. Okay, so in chapter 233, we see this random island that is shaped like a skull, or rather, it has a mountain on the island that's shaped like a skull. Not in the way that Hachinosu is. This looks more of like a natural kind of, you know, rock face that just ends up looking like that. So Buggy and the crew, you know, Kabaji, Moji, Alvida, they're all inside of this cave looking for the treasure. They even mention Captain John's treasure by name, and it turns out it's actually not the treasure trove. It turns out it's actually a bunch of coal miners are working in this cavern, and they well, actually, this, I don't think this is where Buggy gets captured. No, this isn't where Buggy gets captured, sorry. This is the first cave where he ends up making friends with a bunch of coal miners, and then he tries this again in another cave, and he ends up stumbling upon a marine base, and he ends up getting captured. But it's the same basic idea. He's looking for Captain John's treasure in these caverns, and then he ends up stumbling upon a marine base, and he ends up getting sent to Impel Down. Okay, now, here's the kicker, though. Buggy looks for Captain John's treasure on an island that has a mountain that's shaped like a skull, all right? Which that must mean that Buggy, because he probably researches Captain John's treasure quite a bit. He knows a decent amount about this treasure, all right? I bet you there's some words or some verbiage in Captain John's treasure lore or whatever that says, you know, the treasure can be found inside of the mountain made of a skull, or something like that. Inside of the rocky skull is Captain John's treasure, you know, something like that, okay? So Buggy sees an island with a skull mountain, so he's like, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. Skull Mountain right there. This has got to be it. So they look for it, and it obviously wasn't on that island, because that was like a coal mine, right? And there was another island he was looking for, and I'm also probably kind of looked like a skull, but that's where the marine base was. It's probably Hachinosu. What other island do we know about that has a giant skull on it? So it's like, he thought it was this island. Why did Buggy think it was this island? Because they look similar. Because it's like, oh, it must be a giant skull. So, and Captain John was a member of Rox's crew, all right? So here's what I think happened. Here's what I think happened, okay? Rox purportedly dies at God Valley. I say purportedly with air quotes because we don't know if he's actually dead or not. He might show back up, okay? But he's out of the picture for a while, okay? So that means their home base of operations, the Hachinosu, is now kind of up for rent. You know, anybody could sort of move in. So who's going to move into this place? Now, we know that Ochoku, or Wang Ji, we know that Wang moved in at some point, right? Because then the whole incident with the Rocky Port occurred, and then Blackbeard ousted Ochoku, and then he took over where he's at right now, okay? So we know Rox controlled it, and then we know Ochoku controlled it, and now, currently, Blackbeard controls it. He took it from Wang Ji. Now, what if Ochoku wasn't the first person to take it over after the events of God Valley? What if John made it back first, and then John was the one that actually took control of Hachinosu immediately after Rox's death? And then he hid his treasure there somewhere on the island, somewhere under the soil or in the mountain, or he hid it somewhere. And then John was killed. He was mutinied by his own crew. And then Ochoku, it was once again up for rent. So then Ochoku took it up, and then he controlled it for a while. And then, I mean, it might have been a bunch of people. It might have been Ochoku. It might have been Silver Axe. It might have been Shiki that ruled over it for a while. And then finally Ochoku, and then eventually Blackbeard. Okay, so it might have been a few people that controlled that place, because only a few people knew where it was and knew the importance of it and everything like that. So it might have been like the remnants of Rox's crew controlled it, right? But John was definitely killed at one point. Wang Ji, as far as we know, should still be alive. I don't think he was killed by Blackbeard. He just left. Okay, so I think Wang Zhi is still alive out there somewhere. We don't know anything about Silver Axe. Shiki's most likely still alive. But it might have been a few people that controlled that island before Blackbeard took it over, okay? So Buggy is like convinced it's some island that's shaped like a skull. So that's where the treasure is. And it makes perfect sense that even with his warlord status, even with his like Buggy's delivery service, even with Hyrudine and all the giants helping him out, why he still could not find Captain John's treasure. Because if it's in the Hachinosu, in the beehive, you know, Prince Groose said it best. You know, if you stick your face in a beehive, guess what's going to happen? So even if Buggy learned about, Buggy might have actually found out it is the Hachinosu, like, because he has the armband, and I'm going to talk about how the armband actually works in a second, but if he has the armband and he figures out where the treasure is, they could have been plotting it on a map and been like, okay, Alvida, okay, Galdino, this is it. I finally have the armband. We're going to finally find out where Captain John's treasure is, and they're plotting it, and they find it, and it turns out it's the Hachinosu. Turns out it's full of Lead Island. And at that point, even, like, this would have been 2 years ago. This would have been before Blackbeard took it over, so Wang Zhi was taking it over. Listen, I'm going to tell you what right now. Buggy does some stupid things in this story. But even Buggy D. Clown is not stupid enough to mess with Wang Zhi. I mean, who is, really? I mean, Blackbeard was, but I'm going to think he got lucky. Okay, Wang Zhi now has a vendetta against Blackbeard. He's going to come back and kick Blackbeard out of Hachinosu. You just wait for that moment, okay? But Buggy sees that, and he says, oh, it's the Pirate Paradise. It's Hachinosu Island. It's where Ochoku is currently ruling it. Well, guess it was a good dream while it lasted. We're not going after Captain John's treasure. Kabaji and Moji are like, okay, Captain, let's go. It's like, it's Wang. You don't want to mess with Wang. Even on the best of days, you do not mess with Wang Zhi. And it's like, okay, sure. And then they just decided to start up Buggy's delivery. They said, how about we just get a loan from Crocodile? Like, okay, that's better. You know, okay. So, yeah, that's where I think it is. I mean, it most likely is there. Now, maybe Blackbeard found it. Blackbeard might have found the treasure. Maybe Ochoku already found the treasure. Maybe Ochoku found it, and that's what financed his operations, and then Blackbeard took over, ousted Wang Zhi, or Ochoku, and then he got the treasure. So maybe that might help Blackbeard out right now. Blackbeard's entire pirate fleet, the 10 Titanic captains, all of his ships are running on Captain John's treasure right now, essentially. Maybe. So how exactly does the armband work? I mean, it's pretty, like, you know, it's a pirate story, so I'm assuming there's some kind of map, and then much like in the critically acclaimed movie, and probably Nicolas Cage's greatest movie ever, National Treasure, of course, you have the magic, you know, glasses, like the bifocal glasses, Ben Franklin's glasses that can, like, look at things from different, like, perspectives and, like, refracting the light in different colors and everything like that. It's probably something like that. It's like you take the armband, which has 2 gems or glass lenses inlaid in the armband, and I guess you take them and you put them over the map or maybe a rock or something that has writing on it or supposed to have writing on it that Buggy probably already had in his possession, or maybe Captain John's diary or Captain John's journal. Maybe Buggy somehow got his hands on that, you know, something somehow. Maybe Roger gave it to him. Who knows? Maybe back in the day, Buggy was like always like researching treasure. Like Buggy was always obsessed with treasure. So maybe one day Roger or Rayleigh, you know, for Buggy's birthday present or something, they're just like, hey, Buggy, you're always out here looking at treasure maps. Here's your birthday present. It's Captain John's journal. We grabbed it off of him during, we stole it from him during God Valley. Here you go. What? Captain John's treasure? This is great. Yeah, well, we can't, you know, really decipher it at all. You need the armband, but here you go. Maybe, yeah, maybe he got it from Roger. Maybe they grabbed it or stole it off of John during God Valley, and then Buggy had it his whole life, and that's why he was so obsessed with Captain John's treasure, and then he finally got the armband, and he's like, oh, wait, now we can actually decipher the, you know, whatever, and then he did figure out where it was. It's just, it was too dangerous. You know what I mean? It's just like, imagine if, you know, it would be the same thing like you find out the greatest treasure in the world is located underneath Pangea Castle at Marijois. You know, maybe the Straw Hats would go for it. Maybe Luffy would be like, oh, okay, that's where the One Piece is. That's where we're going. But if Buggy found that out, he's like, oh, it's under Marijois? Okay, well, guess we can't find it. Well, you know, it was a good dream. You know, we had the dream. We made friends along the way. That's all that really matters, right? Okay. So, what is Captain John's treasure, I guess? I think it's the same deal with the One Piece. There's going to be a lot of gold involved in this. Actually, going back to National Treasure, you know how, like, at the end of the movie, spoilers for National Treasure, go watch it. Nicolas Cage, man, fantastic. Anyway, they open up the treasure chamber, and it kind of just, like, they light, the torch, and it, like, slowly lights up the entire room, and it's just, like, more and more and more and more treasure, right? From, like, thousands of years, from like ancient Egypt to like the Roman Empire to like going all the way up to present day or whatever. And I think it's going to be something like that with the One Piece, where yes, the One Piece treasure is going to be something very important for like the ancient weapons and the ancient kingdom, and the whole thing with like Joy Boy and all that kind of stuff, the true history of the Void Century. That stuff's going to be there as well. But I think there's also just going to be mountains and mountains of gold, and I think Captain John's treasure is that as well. So there might be something else. And honestly, I think Captain John's treasure is going to be relevant to this story, because now that we know Captain John used to be part of Rox's crew, like there could be something in his treasure trove that might have a hint as to who Rox was, or his ultimate goal, or maybe it was something that John stole from Rox, before Rox died at God Valley. Maybe Rox, maybe John stole something from him, and then he added that to his treasure, which is currently on Hachinosu in the possession of Blackbeard. Or it could be on Hachinosu, but Blackbeard might not even know about it. He might not know about Captain John's treasure. He might just, it might have just like flew under his radar. It might be buried, under or on the Rock Mountain somewhere, and it's just like, it's like a secret vault or something, and like Blackbeard didn't know about it, so it's just like, it might still be there slumbering, right? Maybe Wang Zhi never found it, okay? So it might still be there, but they find the treasure, and it's like, okay, it's not the One Piece, but it's still connected back to Rox's crew. There might be something Rox found. Maybe Rox had a journal or a diary. Maybe that's where it's going to come from. Rox had some sort of like logbook or something, and he found out a bunch of stuff about the world, and then that was in there, and so they find this old raggedy book in there amongst all this gold, and it's like, oh, okay, this is stuff that's like, it doesn't directly talk about, like, what happened during the Void Century, but it gives hints to it. Maybe it talks about Eam or something like that. Rox wanted to be the ruler of the world, the king of the world. And we find out that Eam is actually the true ruler, monarch, the singular monarch of the entire world in secret. So what if Rox had some connection with Eam in some way? Maybe Rox found out about Eam, and that's why God Valley happened or whatever. Maybe there was a big thing with the world government or something. So maybe he found out about Eam and he wrote it down, and so maybe that's like one of the only recorded records on the entire planet of Eam's existence is, something that Rox wrote down, which then got into John's possession, which is now in his treasure, which is now on Hachinosu. There it is. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because it was, for the longest time, I thought Captain John's treasure was just going to be like a plot device for Buggy. I really did. I thought it was just going to be, okay, Buggy's looking for this treasure. He finds it. It's like, oh, look at all the gold. He takes all the gold and he creates the Buggy's delivery, and then that's it. That's all it was just gold. Now that it's revealed that he never found the treasure, because he wouldn't need the treasure if he got the startup from Crocodile, okay? He would not go to Crocodile for a loan if, he already found this treasure. So that means he didn't find it, or rather he knows where it is, but he just can't get to it for whatever reason. So, and now that the Hachinosu, which is a skull mountain island, a typical pirate island with a skull, which is like the island that Buggy looked at, so it's probably what Captain John's treasure was actually connected to, and then John was also made a member of Rox's crew. I think this is all going to connect back in a big way. Now, it doesn't mean that the Straw Hats are necessarily going to find it, and it also doesn't mean that Buggy is going to find it. But who might find it is actually Law, because Law is fighting against Blackbeard right now. Maybe they're close to the Hachinosu. Maybe Kid might find it. Like, who else? Like, okay, so Buggy is working with Crocodile and Mihawk. Maybe in an effort to try to pay back Crocodile, Buggy tells them about Captain John's treasure. So maybe Buggy is sitting there and he's, he has Yoru to his freaking throat, and he has Crocodile's hook, to him, and he's just like, oh, I'm sorry, guys, I'm sorry. And it's like, you gotta pay back what you owe, clown. And then Buggy's just like, okay, listen, guys, I'll level with you. Do you know about Captain John's treasure? Now, I'm sure Crocodile and Mihawk have probably heard of Captain John and his treasure. It's a pretty famous treasure. So they'll be like, yeah, we've heard of the treasure. Nobody knows where it is. And he's like, actually, so fun story. I actually did find out where the treasure was. Straw Hat actually gave me the armband 2 years ago, and I actually had his logbook, so I know exactly where it is. I just can't get to it because it's on the Hachinosu. So it would be funny if he tells that to Crocodile and Mihawk, because they would definitely be strong enough working together to, Crocodile, Mihawk working together, and like all the people in the Cross Guild going up against Blackbeard. That's a force to be reckoned with. That might actually go either way, you know what I mean? So it's like, okay, so this great treasure, all this money, all of Captain John's riches is in the Beehive, where Blackbeard is currently having his base of operations. And Buggy's like, yes, I swear to God. Why do you think I went to you for a loan, Crocodile? I can't go get it, but you guys are really strong. If you guys work together, you might be able to go to Hachinosu, oust Blackbeard, and you might be able to get the greatest treasure in the world next to the One Piece, the second greatest treasure in the world. And, who knows? Maybe Crocodile and Mihawk would be like, I don't know about this, but it is a lot of money, and they could definitely use it. So who knows where this might go? God, so we could have Crocodile, Mihawk, Buggy, Cross Guild all fighting against Blackbeard's crew. Maybe they might show up and save Law. Maybe that might happen. Maybe Law's crew is on the brink of being defeated, and then while Blackbeard, or I guess the smarter thing would be while Blackbeard is fighting Law's crew, that's when they sneak into the Hachinosu and get the treasure, and the Cross Guild skips out. That would probably make more sense. Law could probably handle himself, but hey, Blackbeard's out doing something else? Okay, let's go. Let's find the treasure. Buggy would know exactly where it is. He wouldn't even just know the island. He might be like, okay, the armband says, okay, it's in the skull's bottom tooth. There's a hidden, like, there it is. There's treasure. And then they get it, and then they get the hell out of there, right? They just escape. Crocodile uses his sand to, like, scoop up all the treasure, and then they just skip out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It might actually happen. That might actually happen, yeah. There's also, it's a story about pirates, and like a very stereotypical thing in pirate fiction is the island with a skull, and is like the treasure's in the skull's right eye. But we kind of already did that with Skypiea, Jaya. So maybe you might say, oh, maybe Captain John's treasure is on Jaya. No, because that was very clearly the golden city of Shandora. I think Captain John's treasure is something completely separate, but it is on an island that has a skull, which it just happens in the One Piece world. There's a lot of islands that have, skull mountains or skull-shaped rocks on them as it happened, okay? But anyway, that's the video. Let me know what you think about the second greatest treasure in the One Piece world. And now we can move on to some good old-fashioned octopus facts. Octopus facts. Okay, so this was in an effort to try to find the most ancient example of an octopus. Like an extinct octopus from like hundreds of millions of years ago. Like, what was the oldest ancient octopus? You're picturing like a giant octopus like the Kraken coming up out of the water and devouring a T-Rex or something. That would be pretty cool. I don't think that existed. But anyway, so the first thing I found was there was a fossil that was dated to 296 million years ago during the Carboniferous period. Not the Carniferous period, the Carboniferous period. And so they initially believed this fossil, Polyspia mazonensis. It was found in Mazon Creek in Illinois in the United States. That's why it's named after that. But they found this fossil, and they thought this was initially a cephalopod or some type of mollusk. Throughout the years, it's been analyzed, and it's kind of a little bit debatable now whether or not this was actually a cephalopod or a mollusk. Part of it's like, oh, maybe that's the ink sac there, but it has no arm hooks and no suckers. So they were thinking it was some kind of ancient octopus or some kind of ancient squid, and it's up for debate. It might have been, but they just don't know. However, that was rendered moot actually earlier this year. So in 2022, another fossil was found of, this one is Cyplopemodi bideni, literally named after President Joe Biden. But anyway, this was discovered in this year, and this fossil is 330 to 323 million years ago. So it's older than this initial fossil from 296, okay? And this is confirmed to be in okay, literally the name is based off of vampire. Vampiropoda, or which is also where like squids are part of. So like octopuses and squids are in Vampiropoda. And there's even a squid called the vampire squid. So I don't know if we're going to do squid facts or what. Probably not, because we're doing octopus facts, but whatever. There's a squid named the vampire squid. So there you go. Anyway, this is confirmed right now as of the moment to be the earliest example of a cephalopod, of an octopus squid-like being, because it was over 320 million years ago. So there we go. There's Cyplopemodi bideni. There you go. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. That was the video. Tekking signing out. Now leave me alone with my treasure. Summon Skull. Oh, check it out. Makiura the Destructor, the greatest card ever. The errata made it even greater. I love Makiura because on the surface, Makiura seems like a really broken effect monster that allows you to just play trap cards from your hand. You know, I think it's like quick plays, basically. So it sounds really broken, and I guess the initial version was really broken, but like then in the errata changed it and just made it... I don't even know if it was broken in the original version, honestly, because there's certain criteria to activate a trap card. It's not as good as it sounds, you know? But anyway, that's that.